Okay. Was the Steelers' loss just a weather-induced fluke?
Wow.
Well,
Go ahead, bro.
Well, the weather, I'm throwing that out. That's ridiculous. All right. Pittsburgh's weather is very similar to Cleveland's. Cleveland had to play in the same snow that the Steelers did, so that's ridiculous.
And it's
I
playoff
don't even
weather.
like him.
That
right.
can happen in
Exactly. I don't even like him. I bet Tomlin addresses that with the team, if not publicly. Like, that's an excuse. All right. We don't do that here in Pittsburgh, so that's ridiculous. Now, it's part fluke, part flawed. This team is flawed. All right. I mean, I think as well as Russ is playing, he hasn't been great, but he's been good. He is still not the dynamic quarterback he was. I mean, you watch their offense, and he's solid, kind of pedestrian, and then a moonball. You know, he'll get a big play, and he had one last night.
Or solid, and then a terrible,
Yeah, I mean,
fumble.
he's only got 2 interceptions. He had the fumble,
Yep.
yeah. But so he's been good. The defense is great, but I don't think this offense is dynamic enough for them to, like, be a Super Bowl contender. That's what I've been saying. I'll have something to say about that a little later, though. But it was a fluke because they are better than the Browns. There's no doubt they're better than the Browns.
I mean, I agree they're better than the Browns, but I don't think it's a fluke at all.
Well,
I think that you're like
the division is tough.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's. I hate to say total fluke because they are better than the Browns. That's period. But this division is what it is. Here's this division. Last year the Ravens were 13-4, and we looked like the best team in football all year. Blew out a bunch of contenders.
3-3.
3-3 in the division.
Yeah.
Like, and Cleveland had beat Baltimore this year and beat them last year. So the division is so tough that they're better than Cleveland. So in that regard, you could say fluke. But no, this is the AFC North. I'm not down on the Steelers any more than I was before the game.
Okay.
But it's just what it is in AFC North.
So I think I'm higher on the Steelers than you are. In fact, I guess I'm higher on the Steelers.
You think they're a legit Super Bowl
Well,
contender?
I think that if they're not, then the entire AFC is just Kansas City, Buffalo. I trust the Steelers as much or more than I trust every other team in the conference, other than Kansas City and Buffalo. So, so if there's no other contenders, if it's just Chiefs, Bills, then that's fine because I don't think they're on those two teams' level. But I do think in a playoff game they could beat either one of those teams.
Yeah,
it'd be an upset. But so this is why I don't think
Chiefs?
it's
I don't know
this is why man, every Steelers game is going to play out the same way, man. It's going to be close, it's going to be low scoring, and it's going to come down to 2 or 3 key plays. Every game they play,
right.
Whether they're playing the Ravens, who are a A-minus list team, you know what I mean, an upper echelon team, or the Browns, who stink. And so, like, that's just, they play a style of football that keeps them in every game, even when the other team has far more talent,
right.
But also keeps every team they play, almost every team, within arm's distance.
Can I derail it briefly to that take? This is what bothers me about how the Chiefs play.
I knew you might say that.
Really?
So,
because what you said sounded just like the Chiefs, but
I
the
don't
Steelers
think-
have to do it.
Right.
The Chiefs are kind of doing it for, I mean, you think they're doing it on purpose. We think they're kind of mysteriously playing this way.
I think the difference would be just they have a Mahomes.
And they have a documented gear that would not just playoffs, within games they can reach.
Sure.
And so that's why.
It's odd, but that's how the Steelers play.
As I was describing it, I knew that's what you were thinking because there are some similarities in. Well, I mean, if all your games are close, then you can lose any of these games. Right. But it's the Mahomes factor. I think Andy has gone from being one of the worst game managers to one of the best. And Tomlin, like I got texts from buddies who are Steeler fans or maybe more accurately bet the game. By the way, don't lay 3.5 in a road divisional AFC North game. Come on. Mad at Tomlin's game management.
Yeah.
And the thing is this, there isn't the perfect coach out there. So like when we talk about motivation, how much you get out of your offense, how much you get out of your defense, game management, those things, great culture, all of it. It feels like the coaches that struggle, like Andy did really his whole career pre-Mahomes, like Tomlin does at times.
Shanahan
has his, exactly. Those guys, it's glaring because it happens during the game, during the most important parts of the game, and it feels like, oh, it cost them. But it's like, man, how many other coaches would have the Steelers 8-2 with, in this spot? And so I just think so I don't think it's a fluke, and I don't even really know if it's a flaw. It's just who they are as a football team. These games are going to be close, and it's also why I don't buy into as much as others. Oh my God, this gauntlet of the schedule they have coming up, because all their games are tough. Like the
Steelers, yeah.
The Steelers, you know what? Like I know objectively, it's like, man, look at those teams they have left. I get it's harder than maybe anybody's schedule.
Yeah.
I get it, but
they had a nice little road there.
Sure,
they lost.
But my point is, they're going to be playing all those games close. They did.
Especially,
they lost to the Cowboys and the Colts. They beat the Chargers and the Ravens and Washington.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what they're like quickly? They're like, when I covered the NBA in the 90s, you had games. I covered the Cavaliers, Mike Fratello's coach. They would play routinely in the 70s. But what that did was condense the talent deficit between them and other teams. So they always had a chance to beat teams because they slowed the game down, and that takes away the talent gap. So Pittsburgh, there's some of that in their style.
One more thing before we move on to Russ and Justin. Browns have now won 7 straight overall on Thursday night and 9 straight Thursday night home games. It's just really kind of
and Tomlin now is 1-7 on his last 8 Thursday night games.
Weird on the road.
On the road, thank you.
On the offense side of the ball, the Steelers look like they're going to go with 2 quarterbacks. Justin Fields took 7 snaps. Tomlin said it wasn't just because of the snow, so that was planned. Brew, do you like this idea?
Look, we talked about it earlier in the season, maybe before Russ was playing, maybe before he was hurt, and I didn't like it. Now I do like it. After watching Russ for 5 games, now I'm not talking about a 50-50 split or even close. I'm talking about Russ is your starter, your primary quarterback by a mile, but you have packages where you bring Justin in like you saw last night, like Taysom Hill with Drew Brees a few years ago. Yeah. And I say that because earlier I had just said, as well as Russ is playing, I don't think he's dynamic enough at this point for them to win the AFC. I just think you're going to have to beat Josh, to beat Lamar, to beat Patrick. You're going to have to be dynamic at some point. And because he doesn't have the legs anymore, I don't think that's a part of his game. But if you combine him with Justin Fields here and there, you keep the defense guessing. They have to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. And Justin, we saw last night, even in the snow, can run the football. And so you kind of get, the best of both worlds in that scenario. Again, not even close to 50-50, but Justin in here and there, absolutely.
So I don't mind it, but it needs to be cleaner. So there was a key 4th down. They had Justin come in. They get the play in seemingly late. They don't want to use a timeout. They don't get to the line until there's 6 seconds, which is a huge benefit for the defense. Yeah. You can't change anything. Absolutely. You can't, the defense doesn't have to disguise anything. That stuff has to be cleaner. And I almost wish they would use him. I wish they had planned this out better. Maybe if Russ had not been injured in training camp, they could have. I wish they used him more like the Saints use Taysom Hill now, where it's like, hey, when you're on the field, you might you could be split out to the outside. You could be the running back. You could be he is 100% athletic enough. So Taysom is on the field a lot right now with Derek Carr on the field. Yeah. Build out something where both players are on the field, to me, could be a unique wrinkle. It feels to me like it's consistently disjointed when he comes out there, even though it adds some high upside plays. And so that I do think the Steelers don't have enough talent on offense to just shelve this idea because he is a talented player. But I still you don't trust him as a passer, and you never have in his career. He hasn't kind of developed that. And so finding a better way to use it is what I would say.
Just quickly, Brew, the thing that kind of made my antennas go up is when Russ says, as a competitor, I always want to be out there. And I think he said everything right, but he's not 100% bought in on this.
I got to be honest. I don't know. Inside, guys might say the right thing. Inside, I don't know a starting quarterback that would be. I mean, or a competitor in general. I know when I competed how I felt about being on the field, and obviously at a much lower level. But I'm just saying, yeah, Russ wants to, like every starting quarterback wants to play every play. What he's got to do is maybe look at a Drew Brees, who obviously is going to be a Hall of Famer, and say, well, Drew did it with Taysom Hill later in his career. Why can't I do it? It will take some ego management from Russ within himself. I don't think it'll cause problems, say the wrong thing. And he better not, because he, as well as he's playing, he's not playing that well.
It's weird. It's like
you just
7's just right, 10 is too many. You start to like get in this weird dance.
But here's the other thing. Prior to last night, Russ's play had gotten a little bit worse in each game, and was hidden in the story of the Ravens game. He was awful. Like you might not call it awful, but I thought he was playing poorly, and then if you're already playing poorly and then have an egregious interception that could have lost him the game, that's how I get to awful. Yesterday, aside from the fumble, it was a step in the right direction, but I think his level of play in the Ravens game is what made Justin Fields more part of the game plan leading up to this week.
Yeah.
And the one thing that is a big story in Pittsburgh, less nationally, is Arthur Smith seems to really like Justin Fields. And all of the offensive coordinators' quotes, about Justin Fields, and that maybe is more along the line of the people in Chicago love Justin, the teammates. He might just be a charismatic, great dude that people gravitate towards. So I just think, now that they've lost a game as well with Russ as the starter, I think the door opens even further to Fields getting more snaps, more games like this. No, Russ is the starter. Right. I don't think it's 100% locked that Tomlin won't make the switch later if they go on a losing streak.
No,
but
just before we go, if you look at the AFC and the Harbaughs, both brothers are like, our quarterback is either we want him to be the best ever or one of the best ever. Andy Reid and Mahomes are obviously here. Everybody thinks Josh Allen's MVP, and Mike Tomlin's team is like,
no, you don't have.
Well, but
it's better than they've had in the long.
But also, all those teams spent first-round picks and gave those quarterbacks $200+ million deals. Yeah. This is a team who's, are making no money, and they were, acquired in this offseason.
All right. Speaking of quarterbacks making a lot of money, Daniel Jones. Oh, this is kind of a sad VO, Dusty. Gee whiz. Released by the Giants today. Yesterday he gave a nice goodbye, and today his Giants tenure is over. Here's his numbers the last 3 seasons. He had that little run in 2022, but the last few years he hasn't been great. Again, the Mac Jones thing is no reason for that. Where do the Giants and Daniel Jones go from here?
Daniel Jones goes to what he should have gone to 4 years ago, which is a backup quarterback in this league. And I know everyone's going to kill Greg, but you've got a little blood on your hands on this one too. You were I can't count the times 2 years ago that you said Daniel Jones is good. I don't know, like that people. So it was, but it was not just you. It was also, sadly, the people running the Giants who got fooled by the 15 touchdown pass.
I like drafting Malik.
Right, there were people, but this is a cautionary tale to believe what your gut is telling you. When Dable got there and Joe Shane got there, they knew they needed a new quarterback, and then 2022 happens. And with that stat we just showed, I don't know if we can put it back up there, it is important that we say its total touchdowns were 22.
Yes.
Because he threw for 15 in 16 games. And it was total yards of 240 because he was running a lot. Even his best year ever, he was not a productive thrower of the football.
And look at the team's points per game.
Right. And despite that, they gave him 4 years, $160 million. So that was an instant mistake that they instantly, I felt, should have regretted. I know, Brew, there is a lot of, Deion Shador. That is, the Giants have a pretty clear history of coach and quarterback throughout a long franchise. Deion and Shador would be a major departure from that, and I don't think that's the direction that this is going. I do think they're obviously drafting a quarterback, but I'm not certain that Brian Dable's out. I think Brian Dable might. I don't think John Mara wants to be every 3 years. You know what I mean? We're on a new coach. There's Joe Judge. There's Dable. There was one other one whose name I'm now forgetting. But this would be the McAdoo. It had been McAdoo, you know what I mean?
Agreed.
All since Coughlin. So I don't know that Dable's gone. I do think they're obviously drafting a quarterback.
Well, if from what you're saying, it sounds like you think Vrabel would be a good fit.
I would, yeah.
Look, he's a very good coach. He'd be fine. I don't like Belichick there. I know
but I don't think they're going to get a coach. To be clear, I think Dable's
okay.
staying.
Let's assume
Yeah.
if they do look for a coach.
Yes.
The reason I think Belichick needs to go somewhere where they are close.
Yeah.
Because he's only going to be 3-4 years, if that. Yeah. And so you got to go somewhere you're close. Shador and Dion, again, if they make that change, I like that better. Obviously, I would love Dallas to just be interesting. I think the Raiders, if you look at fit, would be great for those two. But look, if you're Dion, if you like the spotlight, this is New York, obviously. The defense has some talent there.
Good.
They're second in the league in sacks.
I think the D-line's
sacks per
excellent.
game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they're dealing with a major injury along it.
Right.
They're still excellent.
So the defense is there. That the pieces are there.
They're getting an all-pro
You
left
got
tackle
Malik
back.
Neighbors.
Oh,
You getting a left tackle. You got Malik Neighbors. If Shador went in there, I mean, you have a lot. I think you got more pieces, you can argue, than the Raiders. Their defense, the Raiders. And, I mean, not Dallas, but Shador would be able to step right in New York. So, I like I said, I like other places better for that duo. But if I'm the Giants, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it.
I mean, I'm not saying, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that that my recommendation would be to keep Brian Dable. But I trust, Peter Schrager today said he thinks Brian Dable is going to keep his job. Schrager is pretty good on this type of stuff. Right. Now, there's a decent amount of season left, and maybe it goes left on them entirely. But I do buy that the Maras don't want to become an organization that is cycling through coaches. Joe Judge had a short leash. McAdoo made the playoffs and then was out. Brian Dable made the playoffs and then 2 years later would be out. I think they might give Dable one more year to see, because if you hire Dable
he's not going to have much of a. Well,
I tell you why I don't like that? To me, it sounds like the Caleb situation.
Yeah,
we're not sure about the coach, but let's give him one more year with our rookie quarterback, and if it doesn't work, which it probably won't, versus D'Amico and CJ, Dan Quinn, Jaden. I like the kind of combo platter go forward.
I generally agree with you, and again, I'm not saying what I would do is keep Brian Dable. I don't like coaches that can't control their temper. I think it's a sign of weakness, and I think it's a sign that you're not going to be a great leader, personally. But the difference is they hired Brian Dable because of what they saw him do with Josh Allen, because they thought he was the right coach for a young quarterback. They just didn't have the right young quarterback. Yeah. So that is different than Matt Eberflus, who's a defensive coach.
Sure.
And you pair him with Caleb. So that's the distinction.
Ben Johnson and Shador?
Well, that would be awesome. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.